Chapter 190 is error, so we continue with chapter 191. Chapter 191. My body was heavy, but I struggled to lift my eyelids. The sight I started to see was fortunately my bedroom, and I could feel the big hand holding my left hand tightly. Perez. It was Perez who was sleeping on my bed with a bandage all over his body. Are you awake? Are you wake up? Oh, Estira. I was happy to see Estira after a long time and tried to laugh. But even that didn't go my way. I was so tired as if I had been working all night. You're very heavy, aren't you? It's a symptom that occurs when the TD poison is detoxified. Estira told me as if she had read my mind. Why is Paris here? He's more serious patient than me. His Highness has been here since waking up a few hours ago. No matter how much I say him to lay down in his room, he didn't listen. Estira explained with a bitter smile. Is he okay? There was a lot of bleeding, but luckily the sword didn't hit the critical point. The resilience of Aura users is incomparable to that of ordinary people, so he will get well soon. Maybe he will recover faster than Lady Florentia. I just cut my finger a little, because His Highness is a person who has surpassed human limits in many ways. Well, a person like him treats mana like his own hands, who can't even feel its existence. Sometimes I forget how great Perez is. I looked up at the ceiling, looking away from Perez, who was sleeping faintly. It was to organize my thoughts. The Empress must be behind it. The most important thing is who is the one who attacked us at the forefront. There was a clear corner. The Lord of Susu. Currently among those who deal with swords near the capital, he is the only one who can compete with Perez. When I thought about the behavior that gave Perez a strange time without attacking immediately, Chanton Susu was right. Considering his behavior of even giving Perez an odd time without attacking immediately, that must be Chanton Sisu, right? And the men following him must be the watchmen sent by the Empress to see if the Lord of Sisu does his job properly or not. And for a solid finish using poison, then Estira came up and wiped my face with a wet cloth and said, as Lady Florentia said, it was fortunate that we had made antidote to various poisons. Thank you, Estira. This kind of thing, you were expecting it, weren't you? To Estira, who had a sad voice, I smiled instead of answering. I prepared it just in case because the Empress likes to use poison. I'll make a rarer and stronger antidote to poison in the future. That's all I can do for you, Estira said with a small sigh. Then the door to the bedroom opened carefully. Dad, Tia. My father seemed a little surprised to see me up, and my father's gaze quietly captured Perez, who was asleep holding my hand. Can we talk for a minute, Tia? My father smiled helplessly and asked me. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Estira took Perez out. Normally, he would have already read the signs of my father coming in and opened his eyes. It was Perez who could only move after shaking his body a few times to wake him up. I smiled and waved at the guy who looked back at me until the door closed. How are you feeling? After only the two of us were left in the bedroom, my father said the first word. It's all right, although I'm tired. Father sat where Perez was lying on his stomach a little while ago, and he said in a voice that seemed to go off anytime soon, Dad thought there was something wrong happened to you. Dad, I thought my heart stopped when Tia was lying down. My father swept his face nervously. I'm fine now. Estira says I'll get better soon with a little rest. Well, I don't know, Tia. I don't know if you're really gonna be okay. I could tell right away. My father was no longer talking about this. I'm sorry, Dad. All I could say was this. My father looked into my face like that and said, You don't have to go this far, Tia. My father was in agony. You're engaged because of your family, and because of that, you're in this accident today. My father already knew exactly why it happened today. For now, I've taken steps to make sure that today's accident doesn't go into my father's ears, but it won't last long. An assassin sent by the Empress broke into Lombardy's land. My father's voice also subsided low. But even if it is Lombardy's territory, the Empress is desperate enough to do this. Now that this attempt failed, she'll do something else. It's going to get more and worse. She would do anything to make her son the emperor. My father knew exactly what Empress Rabini was like. Tia. My father's good eyes were colored with worry. Let's go to Cheshire. Yeah? Cheshire is developing day by day. The port is now settled and still has a lot of potential for development. Tia, you're gonna love it. Are you talking about leaving Lombardy now? My father smiled bitterly at my question. Lombardy is a great family. My father looked up at the world tree that gracefully decorated the ceiling and said, But that greatness does erode the members of the family. The family loses ties and couples don't know love. My father's green eyes caught me again. Dad wants Tia to live the happy life, not the man you're sacrificed for the growth of this world tree, but your own roots. Dad, let's go together to Cheshire, Tia. I've never seen my father like this before. He was afraid. Dad, can't leave if I lose you. Looking at my father's face, I hesitated about my decision for the first time since my regression. I wanted to hold my father's hand, who was fearing that I would be in danger. And shall we settle down in a safe and peaceful place? Such an impulse arose. However, when I looked up at the world tree on the ceiling that my father had captured, I recalled the memory that I had forgotten for a while. The iron gate of the mansion, which was closed in the hands of imperial soldiers in my previous lives. previous life. I was so helpless in front of it, the anger of the half who couldn't protect the family. I took my eyes off of the world. I took my eyes off the world tree and looked at my father and said, Dad, I'm going to be the matriarch of Lombardy. My father's green eyes, which resemble me, shook greatly. I'm going to succeed my grandfather. Tia, that's. Aunt Jeanette has repeatedly obstinately said she has no intention of taking over the householder of the family. It's a choice for twins' lives, just like my dad is for me now. My father's mouth, which had been slightly open, was closed again. But Dad can't take over Lombardy because my dad has Cheshire. My father did not deny it. Unlike Lombardy, it's like a child who just started walking. My father was so busy just taking care of and growing up Cheshire. Then all that's left is Uncle V's. I can't see that. I'm sorry, Dad. I will be the matriarch of Lombardy. I said it again and again. My father was not surprised. I vaguely thought that Tia would have made up her mind. My father looked at me with sad eyes for a long time, and at some point laughed helplessly. It seemed he realized that no words could quell my desire. Yes, my daughter had that dream. My father muttered in a low voice and looked at me and said, You could be a great matriarch, Tia. My daughter can lead Lombardy better than anyone else. Thump thump, my heart skipped a beat at my father's words. It was the first time anyone had ever said that to me. You'll be able to lead Lombardy well. It sounded sweeter to my ears than any other word in the world. I couldn't resist the smile from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, Dad, I said to my father with a big smile. Thank you for trusting me. My father patted me on the head, lying down. It was the same warm touch as when I was a child. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The room next to Lord of Lombardy's office. The conference room was full of people after a long time. A meeting was held where all Lombardy's family members gathered. Several people were sitting together, but it was quite quiet in the conference room. Lulak opened his mouth to the household lords who sat around the long table and looked at him. Thank you all for coming while we're busy. Lulak slowly watched the familiar faces one by one, from a young man to an old man full of wrinkles. These were the people who made Lombardy into Lombardy now. Lulak said in a loud voice, Today I want to hear honest opinions about the succession of the household, so I'm calling you here. End of chapter 191. Chapter 192. The word succession. Wait. Chapter 192. The word succession. The word succession caused a stir among the Vasil's family. Lord, those words are still. Are you going to say it's too early? Lulak smiled and asked again, Isn't it time for me to rest now? I wonder if this is what it means to say that each day is different. The Vasils had a sorrowful faces, especially those on the younger side. The only Lord they knew was Lulak. It was hard to imagine that someone other than Lulak would sit in the seat of the householder. There was a strange silence in the crowd. These people, when did I say I was going to step down right now? Why are you all so dead? Lulak grinned and said, Come on, so feel free to speak. Who should I trust to hand over this family? Another silence fell. Everyone is lost in thought. Then Herring's householder broke the silence first. I wonder how Madame Shananet will be. Others nodded and sympathized. She has been taking care of this and that as a Lord Representative. I think it will be the safest option because it's already proven. Does anyone else think so? This time Lulak's question was answered by the Greeny family's householder who manages the land. I have experience working with Madame Shananet. In fact, I felt so secure that I didn't need time to match hands with the feet separately. It's like working with the Lord. That's right, and also Madame Shananet's ability to manage crisis is no match for anyone else. Tolta, who manages the mining industry, agreed. Then the householder of the Bray family, who is in charge of the Lombardy Bank, spoke. I wonder how Gallihan is. Who? Lulak raised his eyebrows with the appearance of another name. What is the reason? Because he already has experience in ruling and developing a territory, Lord. Yes, Cheshire has made a lot of progress in a short period of time. Yes, Lord Gallihan has a very good understanding of commerce and finance, even to my surprise, who do business dealing with money. Bray, who is usually stingy in his assessment of others, was weighing more because of his words. In that sense, Lord Gallihan has a very good side to it. That's right, and if Cheshire is incorporated into Lombardy's estate, wouldn't it be possible to aim for a tremendous synergistic effect commercially? How is it, Dillard's householder? All eyes were on Romasi Dillard, the top owner of Lombardy. The same was true of Lulak. Romasi Dillard replied in a calm voice, I think neither Madame Shananet nor Lord Gallihan can be a good candidate for succession, but it's not going to be the best choice. What do you mean? The Toltas householder sitting next to him asked in surprise. So you have other options than Madame Shananet and Lord Gallihan? No, Dillard's householder, please. You're not. Are you talking about V's? Tolta's householder couldn't bring the last words out of his mouth and asked with his eyes wide open. No, I said it with Lady Florentia in mind. This time, the impact was even greater. Lady Florentia? Isn't Lady Florentia the daughter of Lord Gallihan? How come? The lady is still a little girl. Various words poured out among the householders who supported Shananet and Gallihan, but Romasi Dillard remained nonchalant. She's been intelligent since she was a child. After coming of age, she successfully led several businesses in Lombardy. It's not like Lombardy's history has never had a succession to skip one. That's true, but then an unexpected figure intervened in the discussion. I also thought of Lady Florentia first. It was Clang Devon of Transportation and Delivery. A little while ago, you said that working with Madame Shananet makes you feel secure. Clang Devon said, looking at Greeny's householder, who said that, when I work with Lady Florentia, it feels like I'm invincible. Invincible? Yes, there's nothing to be afraid of, if you trust and follow Lady Florentia. Huh, that's... Then the Heron's householder voiced opposition. But Dillard's householder said she was intelligent, but isn't she still young? Besides, she recently got engaged to the second prince. Could such a person be the successor? This was also a fair word. Again, everyone's eyes were on Ramasi Dillard. Then Ramasi Dillard smiled furtively and shook his head. It's just an engagement. They haven't even officially started their marriage yet. It also mentioned her age. Ramasi Dillard said, looking straight at Heron's householder. Being young doesn't mean she's not Lombardy, isn't it? In short, he said she'd had enough qualifications to become a successor. A frantic war of words broke out, and the conference room was quiet again. But this time, even Lulak was silent and in agony. He knew the names of Shananet and Galyahan would be mentioned, but the mention of his granddaughter Florentia was unexpected. Lulak, rubbing his beard, looked silently at Romasi Dillard. It was always Romasi which had the best grasp of Lulak's intentions and was able to move. Is it like that again this time? Or Romasi was the one who first supported Lulak before becoming the Lord. Since then, Lulak and Romasi Dillard have grown together in a way. Then he came forward to support Florentia. It meant a lot to Lulak. At the same time, he has a question. What did Romasi see in Tia? He could not have supported Florentia in such a public place without any justifiable reason. Romasi Dillard was convinced Tia is the one who beat Galyahan and Shananet and fits the seat of the next lord of the Lombardy. There must be something. Lulak's curiosity was growing rapidly. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Your Highness, it's too early to return. Lignite cried out in frustration. The news that Perez had been in serious trouble. He brought Tedro and Stile and ran to the Lombardy mansion. However, what he discovered upon arrival was Perez, who insisted on returning to the palace without being able to move freely. It's not like the Empress is telling the world that she was trying to kill you. Then you don't have proper medical treatment at the palace. What the hell are you going to do with this body? Angry Stile said, but Perez doesn't care. Get my sword, Tedro. I feel the same way this time. You still have to pull yourself together in Lombardy. Right, you can't even walk properly. Lignite sighed deeply. Perez's weak appearance came as a big shock to the three. There have been assassination attacks before, but it was the first time Perez had been so badly injured. And you said you were poisoned. Lombardy's doctor is so good. Let's get treatment for one more day, Your Highness. But Perez just shook his head. In the end, Lignite raised his voice. Then let me know why. Why are you suddenly going back to the palace? When you first came to Lombardy's mansion, you acted like you were going to set us apart and make a living here. It's because of Tia. Perez, who was sitting on the bed, answered, forcing himself to get up. I can't get Tia into my fight. Oh, it is Oh, it said Lady Lombardy was with him this time. Only then could the trio understand Perez's sudden change of attitude. Lady Lombardy seems to be a very precious person to Perez. My thoughts were short. I should deal with the Empress first. Perez's red eyes permeated with energy. Not only did she send Susu as an assassin, but she put a tail behind and used poison. If she wants to kill him that much, it's polite to attack her with the same heart. But he didn't want to drag Tia into the ugly fight. Maybe it's a good thing I realize it now. It wasn't the time to be happy to have Tia around for a contract engagement, even though his selfish behavior was putting her in danger. The blunt self drunk on Tia didn't even realize how irresponsible her actions were. Sigh, Paris sighed and asked Lignite, where is the Emperor? In the house of a lover in the northern residential area of the capital. Did he start a relationship recently? Well, right. Then I'm glad he's in a good mood when he hears about the breakup. The breakup? The trio was surprised and asked at the same time. The breakup, Your Highness. Think again. If you break up with Lady Lombardy and fall out of favor with the Emperor, you'll be in trouble. There's a hunting contest coming up right now. Why don't we talk after that? It was Perez who knew how important Lombardy's role was in the remaining plans, but none of that could be more important than Tia's safety. But the answer came from a completely wrong place, not Perez. You're talking about breaking up the engagement? Surprised, the trio quickly looked back. Tia was leaning crookedly with her arms crossed in the open door. I led my tired body from detoxification to the hospital, and I came to see you, but what is this? With her squinting eyes, she strode toward Perez. Then three men who were discouraged by the force recoiled as if the sea were splitting and opened the way without realizing it. Where are you going with that look, Perez? I'm thinking of going back to the palace. Why? Not anymore. I can't put you in danger anymore. You're not going to say such nonsense, are you? Tia asked, raising one eyebrow. Didn't the word break up that I just heard come from that ridiculous context? Probably not, right, Perez? Perez clenched his lips without answering. I pulled the dagger out quickly. Did the poison spread to your head in the meantime? Otherwise, Perez, I know, wouldn't say such a stupid thing. Steely gave Lignite a glimpse at the incessant verbal abuse. Shouldn't we stop this? But Lignite shook his head slightly. It's okay, just stay still as the Lady Lombardi does. Lignite gave Steely that kind of look. Perez, I'll give you a chance to cancel what you just said. Tia said with a smile. I'll forgive you if Estira tells that she's using a medicine as the strong one and the nonsense comes out for a while. But Perez also did not back down. He just stared at her with his deep eyes. That's right, Tia murmured in a low voice. Then she lifted a finger and said, poking Perez in the shoulder, sit down, that's all. Unwell, Perez had to sit back in bed, frowned at the pain. Then Tia turned her head and stared at the tree and said, get out of here. End of chapter 192. Chapter 193. Click. Perez's three colleagues pushed each other's backs and the door closed. Sigh. I looked at Perez, trying to sublimate the boiling anger into a deep sigh. In one day, dark circles formed under his eyes and his cheeks became slimmer. This was unrivaled beauty that shone, but I didn't like it at all. Perez, when I call him softly, his red eyes look up at me. A contractual engagement is also a definite contract, but who are you willing to break the marriage? Perez, who was silent for a while, said with a seemingly expressionless face, Tia, I'm afraid there will be something wrong happen to you. It was a simple remark, but I know it's his true feelings. If you break up with me now, you'll be in a lot of trouble. Everything you've planned will be a piece of paper. I know, Perez replied calmly, but it's better than you get hurt. So, really, only because you're afraid something wrong happens to me? Perez nodded. I sighed softly, then I approached Perez's face and I sat and looked him in the eye and asked, you think I'm funny? Without realizing it, a very dreary voice came out. I won't grab him by the collar because he's sick, but I'm literally pissed off. Why do you make me a person who hides in fear of the Empress? Because Bate, who had obtained the information, moved right away. Lombardi's knights came out of the open meadow and found Perez, so he could barely survive. If I had been unlucky, Perez and I would have died in the meadow without anyone knowing. To be honest, it was scary. When I was losing my mind because of the poison, I was afraid I wouldn't be able to open my eyes again. However, that does not change. The first day we met in the woods of the Imperial Palace, I told you I'll help you. I remember. Then answered me, Perez, if you were me, would you just let go of my hand for this reason? His red eyes shook slightly at my question. No, so do I said, straightening up his disorganized shirt, sweeping his head back. So don't make me a person who breaks my promise because you're afraid of the Empress. What it's like to have someone after my life with this. In the meantime, I learned a little bit about how Perez had lived. My mind has become rather stronger. I'm not going to leave you alone in this mud. Perez's brow was wrinkled. He slowly reached out and hugged me at my waist. His hard forehead touched my stomach. Sorry, grateful and affection for the act that doesn't even hold me hard. Those things that were mixed all over were handed down. His wide back in the badly crumpled shirt looked so lonely. I hugged him as tightly as I could. I need to hug you, so bear with it, even if it hurts. At my words, Perez's low laughter vibration was transmitted throughout my body. The last time I hugged him like this on a horse, I had to feel the blood flowing through my fingertips. I opened my eyes slightly and confirmed that nothing was on my hands now. I hugged him as hard as the relief that filled my mind. Then Perez said half grumpily, uncharacteristically, if something wrong happens to you, I'll destroy them all. What kind of joke do you make so harsh? I laughed and messed up Perez's hair, but he didn't answer and hugged me closer and rubbed his face like a child. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. A maid from the Imperial Palace ran to announce the Empress Rabini, who had just finished getting her hair done. Lord Lombardi visited the palace, and not ready yet, so tell him to wait. Rabini looked in the mirror and said leisurely, what a rude man. He didn't reply to my letter properly and just came to the palace. Empress Rabini was also aware of the news that Gallia Lombardi had returned from Cheshire to Lombardi's mansion. She immediately sent a letter inviting him to the Emperor's palace, but he had yet to reply, so she was about to send someone again. I wonder if that child gets caught up in it. It was an accident that Florential happened to be with Perez. It seemed that the Lombardi state was still kept its secret, as nothing was said. Galliahan, who was her father, might have known. Galliahan is a timid man, so I'll give him everything he can, the maid said cautiously to Rabini, who murmured so leisurely. Well, Lord Galliahan Lombardi entered the Imperial Palace, not the Empress Palace, Empress. Now, what did you say? Lord Galliahan Lombardi is now visiting the Imperial Palace and have a meal. Empress Rabini jumped up from her seat. A bad feeling ran down her back. Dress! Bring the dress now! Rabini, wearing her dress and heading for the Imperial Palace, shuddered with a sense of deja vu. This has happened before. The day when Lulak suddenly visited the Imperial Palace, became the guardian of the second prince, and many things began to twist. Sure enough, as she approached the patronage of the Emperor's palace, she heard a loud laugh. Haha, I didn't know you were such a good talker. How can it be right to say that the prosperity of the Cheshire is all thanks to your majesty? Ha ha ha. Even this is the same as that day, like men who have lived like brothers all their lives, whenever they've been out there. Galyahan and Jovins are talking in a friendly manner. Empress Rabini grinds her teeth. Gallian is not Lula. After standing behind the corner and comforting herself a few times, Rabini entered the patronage with a big smile. Your Majesty, have you been here? I ran at once to hear that a welcome guest had arrived. Oh, here comes the Empress. Emperor Jovain said with a slightly cold smile. The appearance of the Empress is not so welcome, she said to Galliahan, who stood up from his seat. It's been a long time. Nice to meet you, Lord Galliahan. The Empress held out one hand with a smiling face. It was to receive polite greetings from Galliahan. But Galliahan did not hold the hand. He looked briefly at the back of the Empress Rabini's white hand with cold eyes, which was completely different from her smiling face, and said with a smile, Yes, it's been a while since I saw you, Empress. It was an insult. He does not have the decency to take on the Empress' hand. But Galliahan was still standing with a smile. If you're going to get angry, let it out. Empress Rabini's long eyelashes trembled with anger, but the Emperor was not on her side. Jolvain stopped Galliahan's shoulder affectionately and said, Galliahan, didn't you say you were busy and you had to get up now? Gallian secretly took his breath before answering, and he smiled helplessly and bewitched the words he said he had prepared. Yes, I have to look after Cheshire and Lombardy, so I'm busy every day. As expected, Jovanes responded to the remark. Right, Cheshire. But should you care about Lombardy, wouldn't I have to put face signs on Lombardy's vassals now? The meaning of what Gallia had said was clear. Jovanes asked again in surprise, did the Lord of Lombardy make a decision on the succession? Nothing has been officially announced yet. Galliahan shook his head. Lombardy doesn't make an announcement about succession until after discussions are over inside, and everything is completely decided. But the Empress and the Emperor don't know much about it, and Galliahan intended to exploit the gap. He intended to be a shield for a while until Tia took over as the successor. But it's true that there's no such thing as a succession without me. But Galliahan's words, Jovanes nodded. That's true. Vis is said to have been kicked out of the family. Jovanes' gaze, which says so, turned to the Empress Rabini. The reason the Emperor supported the eldest son Vis was because it was an overt thing everyone knows. Then I'll go, Your Majesty. Galliahan greeted Jovanes politely. Then he turned around and stood before the Empress. Thank you for your letter, Empress. I didn't get a reply, so I was worried that the letter might have gone somewhere else. Empress Rabini said with a stiff face and a forced smile. As I said, I've been very busy lately, but I'll make sure to answer your letter. So if you have any questions, please call me. What's that? Leave my daughter alone. Gallian added, curling up the corner of his mouth quietly. It was a warning about what happened in the Lombardy meadow. At the end of his speech, Gallian made a light bow to the Empress Rabini before passing by her. Oh, Gallian, I have to go outside the palace, so let's go together. Emperor Jovings also followed him. Rabini, who was left alone in the patronage of the imperial palace, was unable to move for a while. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The end of autumn. A hunting competition hosted by the Lombardi family is approaching. Perez' fellow trio, who are staying at Poirac Palace, was also excited about the hunting competition. I heard, compared to Ivan, Lombardi's hunting competition is so big and magnificent that it cannot be compared to any other place. Then, will I see that Lady Lombardi again? Wow, that lady is so... I've never seen anyone scarier than His Highness. Steely shuddered at the question Tedra threw. It was because he remembered her ordering everyone to leave with a cold face. Because she's that kind of person. What a gentle wolf dog our highness is. Tedros smacked Steely's side. Perez was checking the blade of the sword himself right next to him. However, Perez did not seem to mind even though he must have heard the term wolf dog. Still, his calm gaze was focused only on the blade, because he knows that such an appearance of Perez is rather of behavior when he's in a good mood. Steely was relieved and threw up a topic that would interest Perez. Your half-brother, who is not good enough. I heard he has got more than 10 of his henchmen participating in this hunting contest. What, 10 people? Lignite was surprised and asked again. Oh, I guess that's why he talks about it every time he goes to banquets. He's going to win this Lombardy hunt, beating our prince. What do you think about those words, Your Highness? Steely asked Perez with a mischievous smile. Then Perez replied with an expressionless face. By the end of this hunting competition, no one will be curious about who won it. But what does it matter? Oh, well, the Academy trio giggled, exchanging glances. String, swoosh. Perez, who put his sword in the scabbard, stood up and said, Let's go. Perez was at the forefront, followed by the trio. The destination is where the Lombardi family's hunting competition will be held. It was the Forest of Madman, an area where monsters frequently appear. End of chapter 193. Chapter 194. A separated house in Lombardy's mansion. The new home of Vis and Belsac was especially quieter than anywhere else in the mansion. Let's take a look, Belsac. Sarah, who neatly buttoned up the newly tailored Belsac's hunting suit, stood up her son in front of the mirror. Yes, that's very nice. Brown hair and brown eyes. Although he resembles his father, Vis, Sarah thought that Belsac's inner self looked like her. Belsac. Yes, mother. You're a strong man, right? Belsac did not answer. It was because he knew what Sarah meant. He's not a weak man like his father, right? Sarah was saying that. His father was born as the eldest, but is on the verge of losing Lombardy's name outside the eyes of his grandfather. Nevertheless, a father who lives drunk every day in self-pity without thinking of fighting, Belsac seemed to be upset when he recalled the pathetic figure. Sarah quietly stroked Belsac's frowning shoulder. Yes, you are my son. Sarah, who said so, turned around and opened the drawer. What came out of it was a box carved of wood. Click. With a little noise, the box opened in Sarah's hand. This is what emerged was a sharp dagger placed on a black cloth. It's a gift, Belsac. He had been hunting with Astana from a young age, so Belsac had a lot of it if it were hunting a dagger. If 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 it were a hunting dagger. However, the dagger Cyril handed over was so expensive that even such Belsac could recognize it at a glance. Cyril pulled out the dagger with a careful touch and handed it to Belsac. Take it. Belsac gulped and accepted the dagger. Do you know the meaning of why I am giving you a dagger? Belsac did not answer. He just looked down at the dagger with complex eyes. This hunting competition is very different from what you've experienced, Belsac. It's called the entrance, but the Forest of Madman is a very dangerous place. Belsac raised an eyebrow. The annual Lombardy hunt was originally a fox or deer hunt at best. It was awkward that it suddenly turned into such a dangerous thing. At that moment, Cyril grabbed Belsac's arm hard. It was an unimaginably strong touch from a thin finger. Mother, Cyril said to Belsac, who opened his eyes wide because he couldn't understand it. I mean, as much as it is dangerous, there may be opportunities for you. Do you understand, Belsac? Her low whispering voice was so strange. The eyes of the monsters living in the forest of madmen are like that. Cyril's eyes flashed strangely. If there is any danger to Princess Tana, you step up. But, but not. Cyril raised his voice. Wake up, Belsac. Now is not the time to be scared. Cyril's fingertips, which grabbed Belsac's arm, dug painfully into the flesh. It is a big event held in Lombardy. So this event, even the first prince will not be able to defeat you. This is the last chance to regain his entourage. Cyril was desperate. She felt like she wanted to move, but Vis and Cyril were not allowed to participate in this hunting competition or the Eve banquet. As long as she is no longer a member of Lombardy, she needed an invitation to attend the hunting competition. Of course, no invitations were delivered to Vis and Cyril. Remember, Belsac, you must not fall beside His Highness Astana. Cyril once again asked. Keep this dagger in your possession and use it without hesitation if anything dangerous happens to him. Yes, in front of his mother, Belsac had no choice but to nod. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. I put on my soft gloves and looked out the window, a dense forest starting from the point where the plains around the villas end, and the thick fog that covered it heavily. It was a very different view from the surrounding Lombardy mansion. It's a little creepy. Laurel approached and said, putting a thick fur cape around my shoulder. It was according to Laurel's opinion. Located in the northeastern part of the Lombardy estate, this villa was located at the entrance to the forest of madmen inhabited by monsters. They say that the forest of madmen covered with misty fog all year round drives the people in it crazy. At my teasing and playful words, Laurel looked at the forest filled with trees with eyes full of worries, as if she was scared just by the sound of it. Why did you suddenly move the location of the hunting competition here? I answered Laurel's question with a grin. It sounds fun, doesn't it? I prepared this hunting competition with full authority from my grandfather. The reason was that it was necessary to bring the Brown family back successfully. My grandfather, who looked at me with strange eyes for a while, allowed me to do so without saying much. I'm done with my preparations, so Laurel should go to Marilyn and Sir Flint now. Yes, lady, call me if you need anything else. Laurel greeted cheerfully and left the room. And not long after, the visit opened again. Three familiar faces came inside. You're all set, aren't you? I asked as I looked at Clarivan. Yes, even if the hunting competition starts right away, we are ready to go. What about the Eve banquet? This time, Violet replied. All the preparations for the Eve banquet are also finished. You must have had a hard time because there was a lot of space inside and outside the banquet hall. No, Bate helped me a lot, so I ended it without a hitch. But knowing the hard work of Violet, who had spent several nights, I patted her on the shoulder. Our building owner also has a unique taste, Bates said, looking out from the window where I was standing a little while ago. In a hunting competition held in Lombardy's name, I wonder who's going to fight and kill a lot of monsters. And the rule to collect parts of the corpse of the monster are evidence, isn't that too much? But for someone who said that Bates' face was full of fun and dying expressions, I'm sure most of the nobles who applied for a spot just because it was Lombardy's hunting competition and now regret hitting the ground. Really, I thought everyone would welcome the new hunting contest. The average aristocrat would sink in that dismal forest just by encountering a monster. I'm sure there are a lot of people who abstain when the competition starts. But I put the first prize money pretty big. If you're scared, get out of the way. Did all the invited people arrive? Violet answered my question. Yes, all the nobles who received the invitation and Lombardy's vassals were all assigned rooms. As I was talking to Violet, Clarivan approached me. Lady Florentia. But the look on his face seemed a little worried. Are you ready, Lady Florentia? I know what Clarivan means. When the hunting competition begins, there is no way to stop the flow anymore. From now on, everything will go breathlessly. I've been ready for a long time. I've had a hard time holding it in. The road that came back after a big turn was now ending little by little. As I ran to see only the spectacular ending, I breathed in the cold wind blowing out of the window to cool off my heated body with anticipation and excitement. Then, I saw a large procession slowly approaching in the distance. It's time to move on. Okay, let's get out now, shall we? In my words, three people who were freely scattered in the room woke up at the same time. I went down the stairs. Clarvan, Violet, and Bates skillfully disappeared one by one, avoiding people's attention. And as I reached the first floor, I was alone before I knew it. The front door was already crowded with many people. Oh, the Lady Lombardi is here. Hey, get out of the way. As I approached, the crowd naturally split in two. I walked out with a slight nod to thank them. When I arrived in front of the villa's front door, I saw a familiar backside arriving first. Grandfather. Oh, Tia's here. My grandfather, who was watching the procession approaching far away with an expressionless face, greeted me with a wide smile as if he had never done so. Tia, Dad is here too, my father said, showing his face next to my grandfather. Next to him was Laurel's with a nervous face. Naturally, there was no sign of V's. Come on, let's go forward. Grandfather, father, Laurel's, and me. Lombardi's four men stood at the front of a large crowd where the carriage stopped. You are here. Shananet looked back at us and said, Long time no see, Tia. A gentle smile remained the same. Where are the twins? It's over there. Where Shananet pointed out, I saw the Lombardi knights in shining armor and inspecting nicely. And right behind the knight and vice commander, I saw Gilio and Mayran smiling at me. I waved my hand, small enough to be seen only by two people, and looked forward again. Before we knew it, a fancy carriage was stopping in front of us. Likewise, a group of imperial knights dressed in conquerors took their place as guards around the carriage. The waiting attendant quickly put a foothold in front of the carriage's door, and the door opened with a small clatter, greeting the emperor. Many people standing in front of the front door of the Lombardi villa bowed their heads in unison. Ha ha ha. As if to his satisfaction, Emperor Jovain stepped out of the carriage with a big smile. After that, the Empress stepped on the ground. She looked as beautiful as ever, wearing a dark blue dress made of thick velvet and a short shawl made of fine white fur. Then Astana and Perez got off the second carriage that stopped afterward. So four members of the imperial family walked side by side towards us. Thank you for coming all the way, my grandfather said first. Thank you for inviting me, the Lord of Lombardy. Emperor Jovains answered my grandfather with a big smile. Lombardy and Dorelli stood face to face. It was a moment when hundreds of people gathered at the hunting competition were concentrated here at once. End of chapter 194. Chapter 195. On the way to Lombardy's villa, there was an awkward silence in the carriage where Emperor Jovains and Empress Rabini rode together. The two, who are rarely in one place other than a tea party, did not even speak a word. Especially Jovain's face, looking out of the window, was worth seeing. He thought if he could get out of this carriage right away, he could give out any number of gold bars. In the end, Javain coughed uncomfortably. The reason why he was so anxious about the Empress was the pressure to appoint the Crown Prince, which began recently. Of course, there have never been occasions when the Empress has spoken directly to the matter. However, there is no doubt that Angenes and the Empress are behind those who urged Javains to appoint the Crown Prince at the conference. Sure enough, Your Majesty, the Empress called Javains in a soft voice. I've heard that there have been suggestions recently about the appointment of the Crown Prince at the conference. As expected, Javains distorted his mouth uncomfortably. Your Majesty is still in good health, but you should understand the hearts of the nobles who are worried about an unforeseen death just in case. Just in case. Those words broke Javain's silence. Is it the Emperor they're worried about, or the future of Anjanas? Of course, it is the well-being of His Majesty and the Empire of Lambru. You think I'm a fool. The Emperor has no longer hide his discomfort. His eyes that stare coldly make her retreat. Today, Empress Rabini pushed a little harder. Let me say something, Your Majesty. At Rabini's words, Jovain snorted as if to give it a try. Emperor Jovain glanced at the Empress with his side eyes. At first glance, it seemed to be friendly and earnestly faithful, but there was only greed for herself and her family in it. It's always been like that since the first day they met. Rabini was not the Empress of the Empire, but was just Rabini of Anjanas. Now, Your Majesty is just delayed what you need to do someday. I know. Why did you delay any longer? Don't tell me you're going to make the second prince the crown prince. Emperor Jovain's eyebrow wrinkled when Rabini poked a question with a pointed spear. Because of her mother's low blood, it is impossible to become the heir of this Lambro Empire. Rabini's voice was calm. She didn't mean to rush it. If anything else, it was because she knew that Emperor Jovains agreed with her in terms of the opinions of the lineage. Hmm. There was another whiff coming from Jovains. Astana is not enough. But Jovains had never once thought of handing over the throne to Perez. The red eyes and black hair reminded him of the former emperor. Even now, when he closed his eyes, the scene that day comes to mind is as vividly as yesterday. You will die at the hands of your son like him, Jovanes. The scene which was mocked to him when the former emperor cursed him with bloody eyes still bothered Jovanes. Later, the emperor opened his closed eyes and said, "Let's talk about this later, Empress." Just in time, the carriage stopped. Jovanes walked out of the carriage as if he had waited for the door to be opened. Ha ha ha. Empress Rubini, who stared coldly at the back of the emperor, who laughing loudly, as if he had never been upset, followed him way out of the carriage. It was the same with Rubini, who smiled brightly. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. With everyone politely bowing their heads, only grandfather faced Emperor Jovanes calmly. However, no one considered it. The Lord of Lombardy was always like that. Come on, everyone, raise your head. As if something good happened, Jovanes said without losing his grin. I lifted my slightly bowed head to look more closely at the face of Emperor Jovanes. It's definitely a smiley face, but it's awkward, as if he were forced to smile, and I felt a gaze at me and turned my head. It was Perez, as it was an official appearance that everyone looked at. Perez bowed in small silence when he met my eyes. Likewise, I looked up and listened to the conversation between my grandfather and Emperor Jovanes. But a hunting contest in the forest of Madman. Did the Lord of Lombardy try something different? This hunting competition was prepared not by me, but my granddaughter Florentia. Oh, really? Jovane's curious eyes were on me. I did my best despite my insufficient skills, Your Majesty. I grabbed the hem of my skirt slightly and bent my knees. Then winked at Lombardy's employees waiting next to me. Then, at the sign I sent, the attendants delivered two protective gear to the two princes. The red one was for Perez, and the yellow one for Astana. What is that? Emperor Jovanes asked me. It's a protective gear for the contestants. Other than the two princes, the other participants will wear the same protective gear. I think the color is a little dark. Wouldn't that be unsuitable as hunting gear? Of course it is. However, the Madman Forest is famous for its foggy weather, so it was a way to seek the safety of the participants. If you ever go missing, we'll have to find it in the dark forest. I said so and secretly looked at Astana. I could see a very frightened, pathetic man flinching. Flinch. On the contrary, Emperor Jovain seemed more interested in my words of danger. That makes me even more curious. Why do you have to hold a hunting contest in the forest of madmen? In the spring, monsters often strike a place close to the forest of madmen, Your Majesty. I spoke in a clear voice so that everyone could hear. So while everyone is here to enjoy the hunting competition, I thought it might be helpful for the people of the empire. That's a great idea, Emperor Jovain shouted loudly. Then he rubbed his bearded chin and said, I can't be left out if it's for the good idea. I will also participate. What the hell is this? It was a remark by Jovains that was so admirable that I thought I might have misheard it at the moment. Originally, the emperor should have induced him to enter the forest on his own feet. I sneaked a look at Perez. This is what you wanted, right? Perez's eyes were slightly thinned, quite pleasantly by the unexpected windfall. I looked at Emperor Jovains again and said, But, Your Majesty, you may be in danger, so why don't you try participating in the last day of the competition after the hunt has progressed to some extent? I will also prepare a protective gear for Your Majesty. Ha 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 ha. At my words, the Emperor burst into laughter again. Yes, you are the only one who cares about me. The surrounding royal knights who did not stop the Emperor from attending the hunting competition immediately hardened their complexion. Let's do it. Emperor Jovain stopped me on the shoulder and said, What an inconsiderate touch. His thick hands had been hurting my shoulders, which were heavily thumped down. But I said without losing my smile, and we've prepared a lot of other things to enjoy for those who don't go hunting. So I hope you enjoy your stay at the Lombardy Villa. Especially you, Empress Rabini. Then let's go inside now. My grandfather intervened between me and the Emperor and said, Let's go the Lord of Lombardy. As my father and as my grandfather and Emperor began to walk in the lead, the crowd split, and the road opened up to the front door of the villa building. After that, the Empress Shananet and others began to walk along. Before I knew it, Perez was approaching me. Hi, Perez. Hi, Tia. After a short greeting, we looked forward. Perez's gaze caught the Emperor's back and I caught the Empress' back. Not knowing what was coming, they were excited to see the splendidly decorated mansion and the surrounding scenery. Yeah, enjoy it while you can. It won't last long. Watching them walk toward the mansion from behind, I felt like a sheepdog was hunting. I and Perez were now driving the prey into a trap. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The Eve banquet begun. It was different from the crude banquets usually held with hunting competitions. I can't do that under Lombardy's name. It is a banquet hosted by Florentia Lombardi. As it is an Eve festival held at night, an outdoor banquet using the wide plains around the mansion, it has a rural atmosphere and bright and beautiful lights everywhere. Thanks to this, the space where the Eve festival was prepared felt more colorful than the banquet held during the day. Also, the food and drinks served were prepared only as top quality. Everything seems to be going smoothly. I took a seat in front of the banquet and looked around. The Emperor and my grandfather had already moved to other places. Where did you hide? There was only one object I was looking for. Oh, I found it. Astana is in the distance, and Belsac that stalks together like a gum. I called an employee who was passing by with a drink. Instead of this wine, take Kaloga and don't stop providing drink on the side of the Highness First Prince. Kaloga was Astana's favorite solo that Bate had known in advance. Yes, lady. The servant who answered me politely prepared Kaloga wine on a silver platter and walked toward Astana. Astana's face, which was listening to Balzac with a very annoying face, turned bright. He discovered the Calago wine. Right, right. I watched Astana with a little nervousness. Drink, drink, drink. And all too easily, without a bit of trouble, Astana picked up a glass of Calago wine. Oh, look at that. Having tasted the cup, Astana was seen taking the tray away from the servant. This time, I couldn't hide the corners of my mouth that turned upward. Drink alcohol. Drink alcohol. Glop, 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 glop. End of chapter 195.